What up, friends? Welcome back to the local podcast. Today is episode 52. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Brian Nicholas Jewelry. They are Westmoreland's best kept secret for all your jewelry needs, and they're located conveniently inside of the Pawn and Jewelry Exchange right in downtown Greensburg, right down the road. They're a husband and wife team, Brian and Ashley. They're there to bring your jewelry ideas to life and make the jewelry buying experience something that you won't soon forget. They're there to help you out with all of your jewelry repairs, engagement rings, just because gifts, or appraisal needs. On site, you have a master jeweler and a certified appraiser. You don't have to send those things out and then wait a couple days to hear things back. They're right there at your fingertips. You can find them on Instagram and Facebook at Brian Nicholas Jewelry, or you can just stop in and say hi at the Pawn and Jewelry Exchange. There's convenient parking right there at the pawn shop. You won't have to go search for a parking spot. So what are you guys waiting for? Get down there and check it out. This episode is also brought to you by Greensburg Video. If you and your company are in need of social media videos, web videos, broadcast TV commercials, anything that you can think of that has to do with photography or video, you can hit me up at greensburgvideo.com or gbgvideo.net. If you know me, you know my heart is local, and what I like to do is take that level of production from those big brands that I've worked with and bring it to the local market at local prices. Also, don't forget that you can advertise on this very podcast. If you're interested in that, reach out. All right, today we're checking out a local band called Sommelier from Greensburg. Let's do it. Welcome to the local 724 podcast in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the local podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hauser. Today in studio, we have the band Sommelier. We have Brian and Jay. How are you guys doing?
Pretty well, thanks.
Doing good?
Yeah.
All right. So in terms of the band, you guys have a pretty interesting story about when you started the band. If you guys want to go into that, that would be fun to start.
If you can believe, it actually started on Craigslist.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Sort of.
I thought you were going to mention the part that it was before a global pandemic.
Nothing ever good starts on Craigslist.
Like,
this is the most this is the craziest part of it.
Yeah, it is in some ways. I had been working on just a project for fun with a few of the other guys that are currently in the band, and it was kind of dissolving a little bit, and we didn't have a lot of direction, and we were just sort of messing around. So I just started browsing Craigslist, looking for people who might be interested in doing something. And Jay, do you remember what you wrote?
No. I mean, I was browsing Craigslist desperately looking for a band. So we were both not like a fully formed band, but that's sort of what ended up coming across because like he said, they were sort of a unit already. So I think that sort of jumped ahead a couple steps that typically have to be made otherwise whenever it's just two people connecting for making music. So
yeah.
And a lot of the stuff when you're browsing Craigslist, you just start to think, why am I even looking through this?
Oh yeah.
And so I don't know, your post really jumped out and I just said, hey, I'm interested in doing some stuff and we should get together and chat.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, where is it convenient to meet? I'm in Greensburg, so I'll drive to Pittsburgh or whatever. and I think your response was just like, you're kidding. I'm in Greensburg too.
That's awesome how that works
that
out
was
sometimes.
great. And we should mention this was in technically I think we met before the new year, I want to say.
It was
like December.
Yeah, sometime around there.
December 2019. So.
And then we just started to get together like Saturday mornings, just sort of saying, oh, I have this part. What do you want to do with that? And just sort of throwing ideas back and forth.
Yeah.
And then bringing in the other two members of the band.
Zach and Ben.
And just starting to piece things together there. And then everything kind of changed.
You guys hit COVID, huh?
I thought you meant like artistically everything changed and it opened this wide vista of creativity.
I'm sure it did. Yes.
It's possible.
So I guess when you guys found out about COVID and just like the idea that you couldn't kind of be that unit together, how did you guys like challenge that?
I think the first thing was nobody knew it was going to last until November. I mean, basically, I mean, the first thing was, well, we'll hold off practice for a couple of weeks. That's sort of what it was. It wasn't a realization, right? On the 15th of March that, all right, we got to sort of change gears and think of a different way to go about this. It was just like, all right, well, we're not going to have practice for a couple of weeks because of this.
Yeah.
And it was pretty early on, so we were still.
I think we only had like 2 or 3 practices before it all happened. Yeah. So that's sort of the timeline of that. And the other part of that is that I had hung out with Brian a couple times, but I had only sort of met Zach and Ben like those 2 or 3 times before then. So we were starting to put all this together and then like starting to do the stuff that, bands do, which is putting together websites and writing about, like writing band biographies. And I'm sort of like, sort of know these guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And then from that, I think we started to discuss as things got longer and longer, with the lockdown, we started to discuss maybe doing quarantine versions of the tracks that we had started.
Right.
And in some ways that's funny because we did 3, right?
Yeah.
So we did 3 quarantine versions of tracks, which really sound totally different from what we perceive our live shows will sound like.
Mm-hmm.
And so in some ways it's strange because we have some stuff out there already, but we almost feel like it's not really completely representative of what this live show will eventually sound like. The first one was the Barbour, which Jay sang, I did the guitar part for, and then my wife actually plays cello, and so we arranged a cello part, and so she kind of filled in there to really give it some color and maybe separate it as a quarantine version as opposed to the live. And then after that, we did something slightly more electronic, right?
Yeah.
With My Hypocrisy.
Right. Which again was, I mean, there's a different version of it, which is the band playing. We ended up sampling the drums on that from, so Ben is actually on that track, but it's sort of sampled demo drums of him. Mm-hmm. So without getting too technical, but
it was, that one was pieced together from something that Ben and Zach and I had previously worked on, and was never finished. So we had bits and pieces, and we had this great drum beat that Ben had done, and I took a sample of that and looped it to build into. So it's a little bit alive and just a few digital treatments on that to build around because we couldn't get together.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What I think is interesting, listening to your music, I immediately started to think that, you guys aren't a typical band. It's technical. You guys are technical. And the fact that you're talking about looping and digital aspects of your music and things like that, those are things that I guess are pretty popular now. Back in the early 2000s or things like that, only like really big bands were like really sampling things live and using like loop pedals and things like that. So it's a very cool sound. I really enjoy the music. Whenever you guys first emailed me, I told Jay, I said the song put me in mind of an old Raspberries tune called Go All the Way. And I really, really love that song. It's just like the indie rock vibe that you guys have. Feels like, it could go harder, but it doesn't. It stays, and it's so nice to listen to. You know what I mean? Like, do you guys see that being the way, like you said, that might not be representative of what your live shows are going to be? Are you guys typically like harder players? Like, do you guys like get a little louder when you're live? Do you get a little bit more into it, emotional, things like that?
I think apart from like there's we've since been able to get back and begin rehearsing again, just to flesh out the songs in that band format. But the song, you know, so we have songs that aren't available; they're not out there yet. But I've noticed it being a lot of, you know, there's the stuff that we have out there, and then we have more songs that go in very unexpected directions. Even just for like a guitar rock band, it's just the composition is really sharp and angled sometimes. So it does go in directions that I think people won't be expecting once they hear Kasingle, for instance, which we did the music video for, which is basically like, you know, as commercial sounding, I think, as a indie rock band can get, to be honest.
Or at least as we're going to get.
Yeah.
I think we will have a tendency to have a more dynamic live show, both in the sense of like a heavier sound, but I think also we do try to balance some of the more involved tracks with just a sort of volume dynamic between, and I don't mean like the conventional sort of loud soft, you know,
Right.
verse chorus. We really try to build a little journey in each track, I think, in some way.
It's definitely unique. Like I love listening to it. That's what you had sent me a message on Instagram first, I think, and I missed it. And then you followed up on email, and I said, like, man, I'm glad that you followed up because
Very persistent like that.
Dude, that's awesome. It was really cool to listen to. We were actually heading to a wedding this Saturday. I got the email, and I was like, you know, just laying there waiting for my wife to get ready. And, you know, I'm just scrolling through email, and I was like, what's this? I listened to the music, and I was like, oh, man, this sounds really awesome. And it's really cool. And, like, going back to my point, like just the terms that you guys are using, composition, things like that. You're not a garage punk band. We can tell, you know, you sound at least as though you're trained musicians and things like that. So like, talk to me about your education in music. Things like, how did this start for each of you individually?
I think my music education comes from osmosis, because like I said, my wife, she's a professional musician.
And the real deal.
Yeah. And so I'm actually self-taught, although my background is in visual art.
Okay.
And I think when you make a lot of stuff, you still need some sort of other outlet.
I agree.
I think some people who don't have creative outlets search for a creative outlet as a hobby, but when your career is a creative outlet, you need a different creative outlet. And so for me, it tended to be just sort of making music very quietly on my computer in my apartment when I was a student in college.
It's like an updated version of that Talking Heads thing where they all went to RISD and then started Talking Heads.
Sure.
So I attribute pretty much everything to the fact that I have music genes in my family. I typically do that because on both sides, my parents were not musicians in the professional sense at all, although not recording musicians or very creative musicians, but they were musicians, and I think that funneled down the interest to me and funneled down the fact that we had guitars in the house from the 60s. And so, you know, the elements were there, and I think that's what did it for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear just listening to the music that you guys are very good at what you do.
Oh,
how long have each of you been playing?
Sure.
I mean, you from a young kid, Jay.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably. I mean, I'm trying to think. Probably around like middle school.
Okay.
I always sang because that's easier to start first. But yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just really off and on since probably high school.
Oh, okay.
And just find an old used drum set and just put on some headphones and try to play along. That sort of thing.
That's cool.
Learn all the Beatles songs that you can.
Right. That's kind of like where I see like, so you guys can play multiple instruments. Okay. That's kind of like what I'm talking about. Like, you know, the typical garage punk band guy. That's yeah. I was in bands, you know, since I was in junior high, and I would love to play drums. I can't make my extremities do things differently. I just can't.
Well,
like
I mean, we can't play everything either.
Right, yeah.
I don't know actually, Brian. I don't know if you play any piano at all or keyboard. Well, you play keyboard, but I don't know if you play.
I mean, I can find my way around the chords.
Yeah.
But I can't play drums.
I can't play drums at all.
So
it's hilarious. I can I'll sit there if I'm at the bar or something and a good song comes on and I'm just like, somebody will be like, "Do you play the drums?" I'm like, "Nope, not at all. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing." And it's just like,
nope, I'm just drunk.
Yeah, just gotta play it. I'm really enjoying the tune here.
I have really high hopes for my son to become a drummer. He's 7 right now, and you know, you always get those people who threaten to buy your kid a drum set for Christmas. I'm like, well, this is the one that we've been looking at.
Right? Yeah, that's awesome. I actually we went to Tennessee last weekend, and I got our youngest a set of drumsticks, and that was kind of his intro into are you interested in this? And he's been banging them around in his room and stuff. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm going to get him a little pad before Christmas, but I already scoped out an electric kit that I think I'm going to get him.
Yeah.
So I can turn that shit down.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. That actually, I asked Ben, you know, at what age can you start teaching children and what should I do? And he said about 7 or 8. And he said, get him sticks and a pad.
Mm-hmm.
Start with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think music overall is just one of the most important things that a person can really get into. Like whether you're into it as a listener or as a musician themselves, like it's just like it's such an artistic way to just define a path in your life. Like, I mean, if you're a hard rock guy or whatever, or just an eclectic guy, like you like everything. That's kind of like me. I really just enjoy like anything melodic. If it comes together and rings this bell in my head that says like, "Ooh, that was catchy," I love it. I don't care what it is. And it's just like, it's so fun to listen. And that's what I got from Kasingle. I was just like, oh man, this is really catchy. I like this a lot.
You know, I think psychologically in some ways it's a good way for people to tap into their own emotions. You know, when you hear a track, it kind of conjures thoughts and feelings and emotions and actions. And, you know, whether you need to listen to something sad or get pumped up or whatever, music is always so involved in that way.
Yeah. How did you guys end up shooting the video for Kasingle? I'm kind of like interested.
Very DIY.
Yeah. You know, the iPhone 11 takes really good video.
It does.
And so we set up several of those in multiple locations for multiple shots, did some run throughs, then moved those phones into different locations and did the same thing. And we played along to our own track. We kind of mimed it. And
then he put it all together.
And then I just put it all together.
Which was like the hardest part.
Yeah.
So
that's what I do in real life. I own a video company.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that's what I was wondering, like, especially in the COVID thing, like how you guys were shooting and all of that stuff.
Kept it minimal.
Yeah.
Very minimal.
Yeah, it was just the 4 of us. There was nobody else. We set everything up on tripods. Actually, for a few of the moving shots, we
giving away all our secrets.
Oh yeah, tips and tricks. What we did was I would film a couple of sections of the song, filming Jay close up and getting the other 2 guys in the background, and then we would switch, and Zach would do the same with me in the background in those clips. So it looks like, you know, when it's all melted and edited together, you can't tell that
right. Yeah.
one person's not actually there because the shots happen so fast.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. There's tons of like, you know, especially the like DIY stuff like dollies and stuff like that. We used to get wheelchairs from the thrift store.
Yeah.
Now they have electric skateboards, which, well, one used to be hanging right there. It's in my car now. But those things are awesome. Like I use it for a lot of shots and stuff. And now there's drones and all kinds of crazy shit. But I'm telling you, like the iPhone they're great.
I know.
And I love to see people creating with iPhones because it kind of goes, it shows you that you don't have to have, a $15,000, $20,000 cinema camera to make something really cool. And I think that's my favorite thing, is just like letting people know, like, hey, you can get as creative as you want with the stuff that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, for as much as I'd love to have every boutique pedal that exists,
Right. Yeah.
that won't mask just a boring riff.
Right. Yeah. It's really awesome. I mean, like, so in terms of the future, I guess, that song, you guys only got together in January 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and Kasingle has been on 105.9 The X.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome.
That is pretty cool.
That was good.
It was unexpected, but
Right? That's a hell of an achievement, I think.
Jay's persistence.
Yeah. It's honestly, I mean, I've been peddling stuff for long enough. So
You do craft a nice email. I really do appreciate it.
first time I've ever been recognized for that.
Well, let it be here. No, but I think that's really cool that you guys like got that on the radio, and especially in this year, because if you want to like delete all the months or weeks that you guys hadn't been together, I mean, you guys have only been together for a couple months.
Yeah.
I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, and I think we're still trying to build a repertoire.
Yeah.
We're definitely still trying to build a repertoire. And I think that Kasingle is probably a pretty fair representation of what that song would sound like in a live setting too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's why we didn't really bill it as one of those quarantine versions, because we were all able to record it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. No, it's really neat. I think just like, in the fact that you guys all were kind of in Greensburg already.
that was wild.
Have you ever run into each other?
No.
No. It's so wild. It's such a small town.
Yeah, for real. And we kind of would run with the same circles, I guess.
Yeah. That's so
I don't have a
cool.
large circle.
Yeah,
My circle's
that's probably our problem.
it's
Yeah.
more of a point than a full circle, I think.
So like, in terms of the future, I guess, like, are you guys starting to kind of look around and see like, hey, maybe we could play a show at this location? Or, I mean, are you guys starting to think into the future here?
We can play a show, and we are going to be playing a show.
Nice.
We're going to be playing a show at the recently opened Green Beacon Gallery here in Greensburg.
Nice.
And the reason that I'm springing that on you here, as opposed to having emailed it to you in one of my finely crafted emails, is
Yes.
that we just found out earlier this week that we have a date for that. So that's going to be Sunday, December 27th. It's going to be
Nice.
live streamed. So there's not going to be a crowd there. They have a live stream set up there. So we'll be getting ready for that. That's the future as of, the next couple of weeks for us. So
That's exciting.
it is.
I mean, it's real cool. And the Green Beacon those guys are awesome.
They
It's a
seem
lot of
very
fun.
awesome, yes.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun. I saw Adam Fitz down there a couple times.
I do know Adam. I was, I don't know if he's still, well, his wasn't a podcast. His was more like a video show.
Yeah.
That was about a year ago when he was doing the 4 song things. I talked to him about a song about a year ago. So
It's really neat. Yeah, he's got all kinds of cool ideas. And it was fun to have him in here and just like, talk to somebody that, he moved here from Chicago, and just like, he seems like the guy that's been around forever because he knows everyone and he's friends with everyone. And
that's
it's
the
like,
thing,
what the hell? You moved here from Chicago? I've lived here my whole life.
and I don't have
Right?
as many friends as him. What
I know,
the hell's
yeah.
going on?
Yeah, it's nuts. Are you guys like, did you grow up here? Do you know like the significance of like the Greensburg music scene and what it used to be back in the day? And
Yes.
yes,
Yeah, I do.
Do you?
I mean, it's like, this place used to be like rocking. You'd go into Toads and you would see like famous bands just sitting there having beers. And it's like, that was something that I think I took for granted when I was younger. We would see, not that at the drive-in or anything is local, but they were here all the time.
Yeah.
They felt like a local band. I would just be like, oh yeah, we're going to see them again. And it was nuts. Like, it's crazy. And then to have like the Juliana Theory and Zayo and like Seasons in the Field and things like that, like Pensive things. It was just such a humongous scene here.
It was, yeah, between here, Latrobe, and Derry.
Yeah. talent, I guess, that's around here is just like, it's really cool. And then like when that whole thing like died off, it's nice to see bands coming back into the area and things. Like I was talking to Adam and he said like he's got like tons of friends that are just like, hey man, I'm starting a punk band again. And it's like these guys that are like in their 40s who are just like, I want to do so. I have time to do it. Let's just do it.
But that was kind of the thing back then. It was almost this sort of like perpetual peer thing where, everyone just, that's what you did. You just started a punk band. and the venues were available and they were all ages shows. So it was so easy to
that's going to be the hard part.
Put something together and just go and do it.
Yeah.
I think there was so much that was kind of taken from like the whole DC Discord scene, where everyone would see what was happening there and just do it here.
Yeah. It was wild. I mean, just to think back, like, man, I was like 12, 13, 14 years old, going with like my older friends to see these shows. And I was like, man, this is awesome. So like, we obviously wanted to start our own band and things like that. And it was just so much fun. It was a blast to like get to know like all the musicians around here and hear stories. Like I said, it's real neat to see just, a bunch of people really getting into another music scene here in Greensburg. And I hope to see you guys like doing really well around here. I think it would be awesome.
Yeah, I think, we're hopeful too that things will start to open up probably. Well, I mean, I can't make any calls, but I mean, I did see that Smalls is starting to book bands into the spring.
That's good.
And I don't know, maybe they really trust Pfizer. Or something at this point, but that's hopeful.
Yeah. I mean, I have hope that Green Beacon is going to be the place that should have been all this time. Like were you familiar with like the Dairy Theater?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So like,
yes,
that's where I think I grew up in terms of like seeing live bands. I was just like, whoa, this is awesome. Like you can go in there and buy like a slice of pizza for like 50 cents and like see amazing bands. And you got really inundated with the culture of music. And I think that Green Beacon really has the potential to like do something like that. Like I really do see it being able to happen.
Greensburg always feels like it's on this cusp of enormous potential.
Yeah.
But it always seems to step on its own toes in some way.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's funny because like, I mean, I've had this conversation with people 1,000 times on the show and it's the old boys club. That's what is to blame. Everybody is, or at least was, very kind of particular about what would go on here. And, the businesses that could be here, the signage, the this and that, food trucks and all that stuff. And I think that as everything gets younger and more kind of like hip to culture, things are changing pretty fast.
Yeah, more than I've ever seen it change.
Absolutely.
I mean, I left and really decided I was never coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived in Boston for a while. I went to grad school up in Boston.
Wow.
And south of Boston in New Bedford, closer to Providence. And then I lived around Boston for a few years after that, and it's really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept thinking, I could do everything I'm doing for a third of the cost back in Western Pennsylvania. You just have to, understand that you're coming back into the vacuum.
Right. Yeah. Have you moved away? Have you come back and moved away?
I'm from closer to Pittsburgh originally, so I moved out here. And the gap is the thing. I mean, I moved out here having made music in Pittsburgh for probably a decade. And then, still wanting to maintain those ties while I'm out here is very rough because then the people in Pittsburgh don't want to come out to Greensburg.
No, they don't. It's scary for those people.
Yeah, it's scary.
Nobody from the city wants to come here ever.
Yeah. So that was interesting. I mean, I managed to put on some shows out here just that were like in like DIY shows, and it was something that felt like it had been missing since that time that you were talking about. And we got, people coming to them who were like, we need more of this. So it was just a matter of, finding the spaces for it. So
Yeah.
that's the eternal problem.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that you're going to run into, like you said earlier, is just the venues. But I do see, like, maybe, once this is all kind of over with, I feel like, breweries are having people in, breweries are having bands in. It's kind of like, each business is kind of almost like they're encasing like an entire experience for people these days. It's like you can go in and get food, you can get drinks. We're also going to have a band. We're going to have trivia. We're going to do this. There's going to be a food truck outside. Like, everything is just kind of like let's just do everything we can to keep people here. Like,
what was
you know
strange?
what I mean?
What was strange for me moving out here was how much of the experience in terms of building yourself as a musician, how much of an experience playing at hotels was.
Yeah.
Not going to mention any in specific, but it seemed like anybody who was anybody had a spot at a specific hotel, every weekend. So it was just,
that's funny,
coming from playing like howlers and ham bones and stuff like that. It was just such a strange thing to me.
It's the only way you could get Greensburg famous.
Yeah. Serious.
Yeah.
Very seriously. So, yeah.
Yeah, it just
Playing
like,
that and playing Summer Sounds. Those are the two.
yeah,
zeniths.
that's what I was just going to mention. Summer Sounds, like, I mean, I hope to see, the Music Fest that we had a couple of years, or was that last year?
They've done that for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
That was great. I was a part of that, just playing solo. Very much enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So,
And the year 2019, that was the big one. That was awesome. That was the one with all the stages all over the place.
I think they finally got it off the ground there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I was so excited because I actually hadn't even known that it was going on that night, and we had just went out to grab something to eat, and I was like, "What are all these people doing here? Like, it looks like New York down here. What's going on?" And there were just like bands everywhere, and I was like, "Whoa!" And then the people walking down the street with a drink, and I'm like, "Okay, like something awesome is happening here." We went in, ate, grabbed some food, and grabbed some beers, and just like walked around and saw some people play, and it was fantastic. And then I spent like all of 2019, the rest of 2019, and everything up to March talking about how I can't wait for this year to do
probably
it.
would have been like April, probably.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, it was a bummer, but I mean, things like that. I mean, looking forward, I think that you guys will definitely be able to, do way more than say if this was like 3 years ago in Greensburg.
Yeah, that's true. And as it stands now, we're just really trying to take this sort of public downtime to just hone our live show and finish out the remaining tracks that we're trying to put together.
Yeah. So what do you guys have, like, enough of a repertoire to put together an album? Is that what the idea is?
Yeah, I think we do.
Yeah, I think
we have pretty much everything written. It doesn't mean that we're still writing.
Sure.
But I would say we have a good 10 songs that could be an album, once we have them recorded. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
When do you plan on releasing any of that?
As we're able to record them, really. I mean, that's the other thing, is we are recording DIY as well. All just on our own, and he's essentially producing and mixing it. So yeah, I mean, that's a question for Brian. No,
well, I mean,
no pressure or anything.
At this point, we've just been taking it one song at a time.
Right.
There's sort of this balance between one night we'll work through practicing the songs in a live sense, and then maybe next week we'll record Ben's drum track for this one song that's going to be our next recorded piece. And So I guess we'll continue to work in that sense for the next few months. And then as we have our live show ready, I think then we could focus more on starting to record the remaining tracks. Right now, they just exist in demo form that we can work on by ourselves during the week. So yeah, I mean, if we looked at it in that sense, I don't know, summer.
Yeah, at this rate, yeah, I would think so.
That's awesome. And you guys are releasing something tomorrow? Is that
I am.
You are?
Am, yeah. That's just sort of like an aside thing. I mean, I realized that I had done a bunch of collaborations over the last decade, and so I sort of just put them together. And I'm going to be donating the profits from that to Proud Haven in Pittsburgh.
Nice.
So that's just that's not really related to the group, but it's something that's happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are two of the Sommelier tracks that are on it, the Bar Bore and My Hypocrisy. So yeah, that is coming.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I mean, how are the other guys in the band? Like, really, are they as amped for the future of this, or is there anyone specifically that's like kind of, really pumping the brakes on like going out and playing a live show or anything like that?
I don't know that any of us are really set up for like going to like, let's do a live show with an audience, next week.
It's almost hard to imagine that right now.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre. Yeah. That's the thing is it's for the people doing it. I mean, there are some venues that could accommodate stuff like that, but there are so many that can't. So, and so many ones that would probably be very suitable for us that can't yet, just because of how they're set up. So, I don't think any of us have been like, oh, we have this chance for this gig next week, in public at a bar, at a dive bar. I think we know, you have to take it seriously. And so we're finding opportunities that take it seriously.
That's good.
And I think I know I'm enjoying the writing and the practice process right now, where when we bring things to the other guys, I think that Ben has been really instrumental in building some of how we structure our tracks as well, because he's not been just doing standard drum beats. He really does get creative with his beats, and I think that makes it more fun for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got to sort of contribute something, and that's it's just been great.
That's awesome. So with the independent kind of like feel to your music and stuff like that, and his experimentation with the drums, like, are we talking like different timings, things like that? Like, so things that are really kind of giving you guys way more fun when it comes to writing something. 100%. That's what I'm saying. You guys are like a very technical, not your standard like 4/4 punk band. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that happened last week.
Yeah, it did happen last week. Yeah. And it was something that I couldn't even wrap my head around. So I had to film them playing it so I could sit and learn like a caveman. Yeah. I had to figure out this 12/8 with an additional 10 beats or something. I still don't fully understand it at this point, to be honest, but I'll get it once I watch it enough.
That's awesome, man. I'm glad that you guys stopped in to like talk about all of this. I'm really glad that you reached out a second time. The Instagram account for the show is just like, everybody reaching out. Everybody wants to like, talk about their project or their business or something like that. So
it takes a finely crafted email.
It really does. I mean, it stood out, and I was just like, so nice.
Well, we really appreciate you having us.
Yeah, for sure. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you guys until they can see you live?
There's a website that is sommelierband.com. There are social media accounts that are sommelierpgh. So facebook.com/sommelierpgh, instagram.com/sommelierpgh.
And you guys are on Bandcamp as well?
Bandcamp as well. They'll be able to find that through the website. Like pretty much, just go to sommelierband.com. Everything's linked there.
That's awesome. And we do actually have a pretty awesome surprise for the listeners of this show. You guys are going to release a track, or at least a bit of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
We're going to preview a track here today called Live a Little.
Very awesome. So we're gonna play out to that, and I just want to say thanks again for you guys stopping in.
We've always talked about growing old and gray. There's so much time to spend before we get to those days. The world just keeps changing. Don't you know, just all the time. And I'd hate to have to leave you so far behind. I'm not saying that I would, I just have a lot of dreams. And they don't all involve choosing kitchen beans for your self-esteem. Won't you live a little?
All right, so that was the preview track for Live a Little, a new upcoming song for the band Sommelier. Thanks to Brian and Jay for stopping in. You can check them out at Facebook, Instagram, their website, and a site called Bandcamp. All of those links are right down in the show notes. Again, this episode of this podcast was brought to you by Brian Nicholas Jewelry. You guys should stop down there. It's right down here in Greensburg. They're right inside of the Pawn and Jewelry Exchange. So it's definitely a little hidden gem inside of Greensburg. I mean, they're not your typical jewelry shop. There's no stuffiness. There's no intimidation or anything like that. They're really there to help you out. And the fact that they are a husband and wife team really makes it a welcoming atmosphere. As I said earlier, you have access to a master jeweler and a certified appraiser right there on site. They can do everything for you right there on site. So it's very cool. You can find them on Instagram, Facebook at Brian Nicholas Jewelry, and you can even just stop in and say hey. That's how loose the atmosphere is there. It's really cool. Just pop in, say hey, ask some questions, and they'll tell you what's up. Go check them out. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time.